Hello, today we are going to be experiencing a 2024 election prediction for the end of the month of November 2021. This is going to be somewhat of a simulation of whether or not the election would have happened now, today, as in a sort of rematch, as well as sort of projecting the trends for 2024 in 3 years. So this is going to be very nuanced. It's going to be a very accurate prediction. It's going to be to the point where you're going to be astounded, like, wow, how does he know so much? That's somewhat of a joke. I am sort of serious, though. This is going to be very nuanced. You're going to appreciate this a lot. And while I'm bullshitting you and fulfilling the map, I'm also going to be talking about some of the things that are coming up, which are going to be the midterm elections. The midterm elections are going to be a good sign of where the Biden administration is going to be heading towards after the midterms, of course, and the 2024 election in general. That's assuming he'll still be alive, which is a safe bet considering that he has good health care and dementia doesn't really kill you that quickly. So we'll keep that in mind for him going forwards. I'm going to go ahead and fulfill some of these safe states. Of course, we are recently discovering that there's a short list that is floating around. I don't know how real it is, but I'll show you right now on Twitter what it is. Of course, I'm banned. But if you look at this, there are a short list of 6 candidates for the vice presidential spot if and when Trump runs again in a couple of years. And it would include Mike Pompeo, Tim Scott, Kim Reynolds, Marsha Blackburn, Mark Meadows, and Kristi Noem. I'm going to assume you already know who these people are, but of course these aren't the best. They're not sending their best. And I chose to put Kristi Noem as the vice presidential candidate because I think that it's pretty likely that it would be her out of those 6 people. I think it's a reasonable thing to assume that that's going to be the case. Not to say that he likes her the most. I just think that that's a reasonable outcome of Trump picking her as a VP candidate. I'm not saying that I ideally support that, but it is definitely a distinct possibility for sure. Okay, so anyways, you're going to more or less whittle it down to the states that are going to be wow, I'm stuttering a lot today. I'm pulling a Joe Biden. It's a very prescient foreshadowing. You get banned off of YouTube, you get suspended for a week, and it throws you off the fucking high horse by a lot. I feel autistic now. Anyways, now to embrace the autism, we're going to roll on with the punches, and we're going to be talking about the states that are going to be within 15 points. By and large, it's going to constitute the state of Iowa. First of all, I'm going to tackle this one. I think it's going to be safe R. Well, what makes you think that, Lalo? Well, not to say the name of the most recent election, because I do not want to get another strike. We all know what happened that year, but we're just going to go ahead and believe the official results because that's what happened. President Joe Biden lost the state of Iowa to Donald Trump last year by upwards of 8 to 9%, and that is in a country that voted 4 points for the Democrats, meaning that basically in this election, I personally predict that Donald Trump would more or less tie in the popular vote. Why do I say this? Well, with time, with immigration, of course, the Democrats have the popular vote advantage. That being said, also over time, we are seeing the Biden approval rating going down. Subsequently, I then think that'll trickle down to the ballot box insofar as people are going to say, you know what, this guy's a fucking loser. I'm not going to vote for him again. He's a sleazebag. He is old. He is unaccomplished, and he's mediocre at best. With that being said, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to vote anti-Trump. Trump is a very polarizing guy. So we're going to expect high turnout from the Republicans in states like Iowa, like South Dakota, Montana. But we're going to see a lot of people in the suburbs be pissed off about Trump and not vote for the Republican despite it being very logically the right thing to do, in this case for the country. Anyways, if you look at Joe Biden's approval rating in 2021, you'll see that Donald Trump didn't have so hot of an approval rating before the election last year. As of November, he had an approval rating of -7, -6, and he got close to winning that election. Not quite, according to the fake news media. But if you were to look at Joe Biden's presidential approval rating as of right now, you'll see that it is -10.5. What that means is that he's at a huge deficit with the voters in general. And when he got about 50% of the vote in he is down to 42 now, so that's not looking too great. And that's not to say that he'll get 42% of the popular vote in 24. I don't think that'll be the case. I think he'll do better, but still not looking so hot at all. He's failing on most issues. Even the coronavirus is getting kind of shaky in terms of handling and what people view his approaches to containing it as being anything but a failure. it is really questionable at best whether or not the Democrats will pull the lever for him in a way that will be sufficient to keep up with the losses in moderate support, and they will flock to Trump in most likelihood. Now, the way I'm phrasing these sentences is very confusing to the normie, but you guys understand it. I think you guys get it. Anyways, the point is that Donald Trump's approval is going to be higher than Joe Biden's in 2024. I'm almost sure of it. And if January 6th will not kill his approval rating, I don't know what the fuck will. So because of that, he can shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue and still have his supporters. And so we're going to keep Trump at an approval rating of, let's say, -2 at this point. That being said, Joe Biden won the last election. You know what I mean? By a decent margin, a slim but decent margin at the same time, with a +3 approval rating. What that means is that he barely won with a positive approval rating. So if he's coming to this election with a -10.5 approval rating, what makes you think that he's going to actually be able to beat Donald Trump in this case? I just simply don't think he will. So he'll regress in Iowa to the point where Trump's going to win it. He's going to regress in Ohio to the point that Trump's going to win it by a safe margin, upwards of 12 points. Again, every state you can add 5 points to the Republicans, because instead of a popular vote win by the Democrats of around 4 to 5, it's going to be a Trump popular vote win/tie of maybe 1%. That being said, there's still going to be mail-in ballots, so it won't be a Trump landslide by any means. The depressed Biden voters will still mail in the votes, so it'll keep them in contention for the majority of the election. Also, I'm assuming that nothing crazy happens. I'm not assuming that we get invaded by China. We're not assuming that the economy somehow gets a second wind and we have a booming economy like we did under Trump in 2019. I'm also assuming that Joe Biden's dementia gets slightly worse over time. It could get a lot worse very soon, but assuming it doesn't, I'm just going to clarify and say that the mental health of Joe Biden in terms of his approval rating will go down, but not enough to make a difference in the election. Like, he'll lose either way, in my opinion. It just depends on the margin. And insofar as Kristi Noem is going to be the nominee, I personally think that she is going to be a neutral phenomena. It'll be like a more moderate version of Sarah Palin. What do I mean? Well, Sarah Palin increased turnout among Republicans to the loss of some of the moderates that supported McCain only and not Palin. That being said, I think Kristi Noem will also appeal to maybe some women, some white women, but overall will not increase turnout among the far right, because the far right dislike Kristi Noem and they already like Trump. So that's not a big thing. And she's not moderate enough to appeal to the moderates, and she's not that smart of a person to, get the Ben Shapiro sort of people onto their side. So I think she's going to be a net neutral. It is somewhat of a positive for Trump to assuage the suburbs and say, you know what, Joe Biden's incompetent, and here's a good-looking middle-aged woman that looks like what you want to look like, middle-aged caring. Maybe that'll help slightly, but not a big deal either way. And then, okay, of course, we have a aging Biden and a unpopular as ever Harris going against him. Okay, keep that in mind. We're going to keep the 2nd District of Nebraska, which went 7 points to Biden last time, and we're going to actually flip this tilt margin to Trump. Why? Well, if Biden's approval regresses over 10 points in the district and it gets redistricted to a more Republican favorable district this year, then I predict that it'll go tilt Republican in 24. That might sound retarded, but I think this is close enough. Anyways, the next state we're going to be talking about is the state of well, no, I'm not going to talk about Virginia. I'm going to talk about Texas. Texas went about 6 points for Trump last time. It went 9 points for Trump in 2016. I would suggest that it would go 12 points to Trump this time, or maybe 10, so it's safe. Why? Well, again, Joe Biden is going to regress even further with Latinos. The Latinos that voted maybe 38% for Trump in probably will break 42% for Trump this time. Why? Well, again, the working class is suffering under Joe Biden with wages not compensated by the increased amount of inflation and a stagnant economy in general. The unemployment situation is not looking too great as well. So given that fact, the working class are going to hate Joe, and the rich won't really like him because the economy is going to be mediocre. The inflation is going to keep going up and eating into their bottom lines as we have further logistical problems overseas. With that being said, I think that Joe Biden has no glimmer of hope of winning Texas in 24. And don't give me this bullshit of immigration. It's not that big of a deal. It will not flip Texas in 24. Maybe in 2036 or something, but not now. Anyways, North Carolina. North Carolina was a tilt-to-lean state in 2012, 16, and you know what? And personally, I would say that it's going to be likely R. If we make minor inroads with black people and assuage the suburbs, there's literally no way it'll turn blue. Okay, so shut up. Anyways, next state, Virginia. Virginia, in this case, is going to be closer than people expect. I still think it'll go Democrat, and people might have a false hope that, oh, well, Youngkin flipped the House in Virginia and as well as won Virginia and made it trend 13 points. But, again, that's with him doing really good in the suburbs relative to Trump. So, with that being said, Trump would not do as well in the suburbs as Youngkin, despite doing substantially better than he did in 2016. So, with that being said, I think that Donald Trump would lose Virginia by like 6 or 7. I think it'll be a likely blue state. Unfortunately, people in Virginia should wake up, but Donald Trump is a populist, and populism does not really work in Virginia, especially in the Nova, Fairfax region in the north part. So let's not get our hopes up in Virginia. Next state is going to be Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to be a state that will flip to Trump. A lot of people call it the white whale. I think it'll go lean. Joe Biden did win the state by maybe 5 or 6, 7 points, but his approval rating is awful, and the turnout will be crazy for Trump in this case. The revenge tour will come fully into effect. I think Wisconsin will be a very easy flip. I think that Trump would win this by a likely margin. The fact is that, Joe Biden's approval is awful. He's not appealing to anybody in particular in Wisconsin. Nobody in Wisconsin is better off now than they were a year ago. So just use that factoid as a reference point for the election. Another point I will make is that Michigan is simply not going to vote to the left of the country anymore because of the suburbs retaliating on Biden, as well as the black people not turning out in the numbers they need for old Cracker Joe, honestly. So just given that fact, I think that Trump will win Michigan by like 4 or 5 points. I mean, it's just very clear. The -10 approval rating is just insurmountable for a candidate like Joe, who doesn't inspire the base. Whereas at least if Donald Trump had a -10, at least the people the 45% that did like him in the country, would stick out their necks for him. Whereas the people that do like Joe Biden are only doing it out of superficiality and because he's not as bad as the other guy. But with dementia and all this other shit, underperformance as president, I don't see these resistance libs coming out as much as you'd expect them to in the last election and in 2016. Anyway, next state, New Hampshire. New Hampshire will go red. New Hampshire likely blue last time, lean blue in 2016, or tilt actually. I honestly think that given, again, the suburbs are calmed down this time, there's no minorities in New Hampshire to speak of, with so few dynamics changing other than for the fact that Joe Biden's very disapproved now. He's net disapproved in the state by a lean margin, I believe. I think that it'll be really easy for Trump to flip this state to a lean margin. I think he'll make it trend 10 points to the right, or I would say swing in this case. Next state is going to be Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania will be a similar case to Michigan, where it'll go lean red. I just see the oil workers in Pennsylvania being pissed. The people in Pennsylvania also in the dying Rust Belt areas, these places that have their jobs shipped off to China, will only grow to resent Joe Biden even more. I don't even see the unions in Pennsylvania sticking up their neck for Joe Biden like they did last time. I just simply do not see any part of the state liking him. I see the black people in Philadelphia and and Pittsburgh. These people, again, you might assume black people vote Democrat, and they will for decades to come, but still, they're not happy with Joe Biden. Nobody's happy with Joe Biden. It is a very disappointing presidency for everybody involved. Okay, next state, Florida. Florida, which is Ron DeSantis' country, will vote to the right of the country. In fact, I think that Florida, which voted 3 points Republican last time, will vote probably 8 points Republican this time. Okay? I think that it'll be less polarized as a state. I think it'll be more swingy in this case. I think that with the Cubans solidified under the Republican rule, I think that Trump would get close to 60% of the Cubans to vote for him this time. I think that slight improvements with other Latinos, with blacks, and keeping the same white vote as last time would result in a +6, +8 environment in Florida for the Republicans, inclusively Trump, obviously at the top of the ticket at the general level in 2024. Anyways, we're going to be talking about the state of Georgia. A lot of people are doomers on Georgia, saying that it's trending away, and it is, but not in this case, not in 24. I think 24 might be the last time a Republican will win the state of Georgia, and to be honest, The majority of the coalition of the Biden voters that got him over the line, if you know what I mean, last year was mainly due to the suburbs around Atlanta and the black people that live in Atlanta and these other few pockets of, urban areas. Well, not urban, but black areas. The point is that these people are going to trend a little bit back Republican compared to where they were last year. And with that being said, I think the turnout difference will also make a big impact on the race. And I think that Trump will win this by a lean margin. I think he'll win it by like 3 or 4. I say this because, again, with the negative approval of 10, you just cannot make it. Remember, Bush had a slight approval rating increase in 2004. In 2004, he had a positive approval rating of maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. More people approved of Bush in 2004 than disapproved, and yet he very barely won that election. So, with all that being considered, if you're an incumbent president with dementia, with a negative 10 approval rating, you're gonna get your ass stomped in all the swing states. And so, exactly, I'm being vindicated in Georgia. Trust me. Next state. Colorado, you might think, why did it take you so long to fill it out? Well, personally, I think that Colorado will be closer than you'd expect. I think it'll go likely blue. You might have thought lean, but no. I think that it went negative 14 for Trump. Okay, so Biden won it by like 13 or 14 and 20, and it'll regress several points to like maybe Biden plus 7. The trends in the immigration of the state by, yuppie Californians and all this are really going to fuck up the chances of the Republicans ever flipping the state in the future. But I would say that personally they are somewhat coming to the light. These millennials, I just think that they're going to be depressed in turnout, and they will not necessarily vote Republican, but not turn out in significant numbers to make it a safe blue state. So it'll regress to the Colorado of 2008 or 12, just for reference. Or maybe 2016 Colorado, I suppose. Next state is going to be New Mexico. I think New Mexico is a potential sleeper flip. I think that with an increase in the Hispanic vote, no suburban trend. In fact, a reversion of some of the white suburban trend in last year's election, as well as, again, the Hispanic inroads and the suburban reverse effect. I would say that New Mexico would go from like 9 points to Biden in last year's election to probably a tilt blue state. I just think that Biden's stranglehold on Latinos isn't really a real thing. I think the Democrat control over Latino working class voters is a psyop. I think that Trump would win Hispanic men in New Mexico and Texas easily, and maybe even women eventually, one of these days. The point is that New Mexico is going to be kind of close. I say this because, again, a lot of the economy in New Mexico is based off of oil, and the oil thing has been a disaster for Joe Biden. Again, Latinos, which is a weak spot for Biden, is going to show itself again in places like Texas, like Arizona, like New Mexico, and Colorado. So New Mexico is going to get kind of close in this case. I also see Nevada going to Trump by a likely margin in this case. With a negative 10 approval rating, Joe Biden will have no legs to stand on. Key constituents in Nevada are going to include the working class, which are getting fucked, the working class Hispanics that are also getting railroaded by the Biden administration's inflation and COVID lockdowns. And the COVID lockdowns in a state that requires such tourism to stay alive, like places in Las Vegas, Nevada, really subsist off Las Vegas. And for the majority of those workers being Hispanic and poor white people, them having mandates imposed on them by the Biden administration is just going to kill their economy. And that resentment against them is going to work really, really bad in favor of the Democrats, to the point where I can see Nevada going 5 to 6 points Republican because, again, the Hispanic trend, the suburbs flipping back, and the general discontent among the working class is going to make a shit show for the Democrats in Nevada. Next state we're going to be talking about is going to be the state of Arizona. I think Arizona will go safe R in this case. Okay, that's kind of too far. Look, listen, Joe Biden won Arizona last time, but if you know what I mean, by a small margin, mainly due to the fact that, okay, well, I'm a moderate, I'm reasonable, Trump is crazy, and that entire illusion is gone because an older Joe Biden is not going to hold the same facade of being a strong person, as well as the moderate thing is fucking gone out the window. He's crazy. So all those voters are either not going to turn out or go for Trump, in which case Trump is going to gain like 5% net vote out of that. So it would be a Trump R plus 5, and then some Hispanic inroads will offset the immigration. So I would see Trump winning the state of Arizona by 6 or 7. So that's a likely Arizona. So in this case, I see Donald Trump, let's say hypothetically, would win 78 million votes, and you could see Joe Biden winning maybe 73 million votes, something like this. And overall, the mail-in ballots will keep Joe Biden from an absolute, from a landslide loss. So this will be an election that'll be a very handsome victory, total victory. Trump's gonna win the popular vote. I think it'll be really easy to win against Joe Biden in 24. You might say, well, Trump's too old. Well, Joe Biden's fucking even older, so calm down. Okay, there you go. 329 electoral votes. In this case, Trump would flip Minnesota and Nevada as compared to 2016. And over the last election, he would have flipped Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Georgia, and a bunch of other states. And New Hampshire would also be a flip from 2016, even though it was razor thin in 2016. So yeah, that's the election prediction. I might sound tired because I am. Anyways, what do you guys think? Comment down below your prediction.